this was in the news last week, um, prior to the interview airing. And Dom and I touched on it briefly at the beginning of the show, if I recall correctly. But there's two reasons I didn't want to touch it. One, the interview hadn't aired yet. And two, Joe, you weren't here. So there were two reasons I didn't want to touch on that interview yet. It was really just breaking news at the time that Alec Baldwin was doing his first interview in the wake of the tragic on-set death of Halyna Hutchins on the production of Rust. And now that interview's out with George Stephanopoulos of ABC News. George Stephanopoulos is a really good interviewer, sidebar. He's a really good, accomplished interviewer, always has been. And he gets the, I don't know if it's an honor or a privilege. You can figure that one out on your own, but he gets the luxury, I suppose, of speaking to Alec Baldwin in Alec Baldwin's first interview since that Rust shooting. And Alec Baldwin, just first things first, even with makeup and in a decent suit, the guy looks really bad. The guy looks like he's had a miserable couple of months, to say the very least, in that interview. In lieu of the tragic accidental death of Halyna Hutchins, the cinematographer on Rust. And he's attracted more buzz now. You've seen it pull quoted all over the place. He's attracted more buzz now and more attention on the shooting itself by saying, and I quote, "I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them. Never." He's claiming now that he never pulled the trigger, which is an odd development in an already odd story that is already layered in a lot of mystery that's still yet to be revealed and sort of dispersed in some ways. But again, he sat down with George Stephanopoulos, ABC News, and did his first on-camera interview since. And this claim, again, it adds this other layer of mystery. I mean, we already don't know how and why a lethal bullet got in a prop gun, number one, on the set of the movie. We don't know that. And number two, we don't know how and why crew members failed to check the live round before passing it to Alec Baldwin. And now Alec Baldwin claims that he didn't pull the trigger. And his claim has also been backed by the attorney for the assistant director, Dave Halls, who I think we mentioned last time we talked about this. Baldwin has apparently been making the statements since the shooting happened, according not only to Halls, but also Halls' attorney as well. And firearm safety experts, I read an article today. I don't know if you guys wound up seeing this or did your other ancillary external research on the matter, but I was reading some claims by firearm safety experts who are extremely skeptical of the claims. And I don't know thing one about guns. Full disclosure, I don't know much about guns. I've never fired one. I've held one. I got an uncle who's really into guns. I don't know myself much about guns. But with the firearm safety experts, though, a couple of them were saying that the specific model of the gun has 4 spots to hold the hammer in place as it's pulled back. And that is supposed to be the safety mechanism for the gun. They said even if the gun is dropped or even thrown, the structure of the gun makes it very hard to accidentally discharge, very difficult. So that's kind of where the experts stand on it. They're like, it seems like a little bit of an incredulous claim. I don't know why he would posit this and come out and make this the sweeping statement of his interview. I don't know why. Unless I would think that he truly believes he didn't pull the trigger, but I think it's an odd card to pull unless you think that you're really in deep trouble either with the legality or the safety issues that were on set. It adds another layer of mystery, but it's absolutely worth touching on. I'll throw it over to you, Dominic. What say you about the recent developments in this Rust shooting incident?
It kind of shows how bad of a situation is if that's kind of the best public defense he has right now. We're just like, I didn't pull the trigger. I was holding the gun, and various other things that leading up to that. If that's, Steve, you said it, as if that's what you're leading with, you're kind of already in a bad, really, really bad position. But the reason why I would go with that, well, it's hard to disprove necessarily. I mean, obviously, yes, there is a small chance, because I think he's trying to push the blame on, this is analysis, by the way, but I think he's just trying to push the blame more onto the armor, or I should say not the armor, the assistant director. who handed in the gun's like, well, it's further down the line is the problem, and the gun must have just malfunctioned because sometimes how technology works. Sometimes it just malfunctions on you, which is true, but it's hard to disprove necessarily because there's no camera footage that you can analyze, or no photos that we, at least none that we are aware of yet. Um, it's just sad, man. It's just really, really sad to look at, and then to see for someone who's just always been controversial. But yeah, it is possible that he truly does believe it, as you said. I know sometimes I find myself fidgeting all the time, but when you have a gun, you should be very active. Your mind should be very active on what the power of what you're holding in your hands. There's the four rules of firearm ownership, and one of them, in many cases, if they're ranked, the first rule is don't put their. Actually, I think the first rule is if you don't point the gun at someone you aren't prepared to shoot at, or something, unless you're prepared to shoot at that thing. Yeah. And then at least the second rule is don't put your finger on the trigger discipline, right? Don't put your finger on the trigger unless you plan to pull that trigger intentionally. And it looks like he failed at least two of those, because obviously the gun had to have been pointing at people for them to have been shot at. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's a sad situation all around. Now we'll see what the official police report. Remind me, did the police report actually say that he pulled the trigger? So I think that's like an opening for him there. Is that
because
unless the police report?
Yeah, I think because it was just a complicated situation that the police just kind of were like, let's just simplify it and just label it as Baldwin was the one that pulled the trigger.
Yeah, I mean, he was holding the gun.
Yeah.
All things considered. So, yeah, it's hard to say, and it's probably going to get very technical. Now, that being said, rich lawyers, or I should not rich lawyers, but probably rich lawyers, but rich people who can afford big lawyers, that's probably their way in, right? Unless you're poor schmucks like us, then any little tidbit of an opening for getting off will probably get you there. Not completely off. He'll probably be sued, and so will the production company for negligence. But in terms of I don't what would charge with this constitute proper criminal charge with this constitute, I don't know, manslaughter or something. That he'll probably get away with that, not get charged with or not convicted of that. But we'll have to wait and see. Joe, did you have anything?
I mean, just very little, because I'm just kind of on the money with you guys. Because again, I mean, even though this is a big story, there's not much more we've, at least for me, I can't really add to it, because it's just another just shocking revelation that's come out from this. It's not even a revelation. It's just weird. I am in agreement with how Steve opened this. It's weird that this is the first thing Baldwin is going to just come out and say since this all went down. And yeah, he did look terrible in the interview as well. But yeah, no, I don't know why you would just be like, I would never point a gun at anyone and pull the trigger. I didn't pull the trigger, and you have firearm experts, saying and yeah, those guns, I as somebody who I've taken gun safety classes, I own a firearm ID. I know how dangerous this stuff can be, and I also know how much safety is put into these things. To make, in case of a misfire were to go off, there's a bunch of ways that it just won't. And
you're talking on the production line.
Yeah, aspect. Yeah, and even on production line aspect too. I know that, and I'm waiting to see how this goes out, because I'm looking at the NPR article, because unfortunately one of the ones that we're gonna use I have to pay a subscription to. But what's it called? An investigation actually went down. A search warrant was given to the police to go check out. What is it? PDQ Arm and Prop LLC, the company in Albuquerque that provides guns and dummies and to movie sets. But they even mention how the movie sets that they provide them to are movies like Rust. You're straight to Redbox, straight to Netflix, not even Netflix originals, just straight to Netflix stuff. So I'm wondering is it really just come down to these straight to DVD movies, they just don't have the safety really on set for crew, cast, anybody out there, because it's just well, this ain't your big budget. It's gonna be in theaters or streaming original film. So who cares? Like, let's just get it done, make our money, and go. So if that's the case, well, look what happened now over this.
That's an interesting development there that I didn't know. That I didn't read that part of it, that they looked in. I mean, it's not surprising in that regard, but that this particular Albuquerque-based company is providing firearms for like mid-tier projects.
Yeah.
Because I was openly shocked. I think I mentioned it in the past segment. We talked about this. I was shocked that this movie was like $6 to $7 million just to begin with. It seemed that budget seemed high for me, just looking and reading about what I have read about the production. But
No, go on.
it's intriguing. It's intriguing in that way too. I mean, it's not surprising they looked into the supplier of the firearms too, but it's interesting the conclusion you draw there, that is it a wider epidemic of safety regulations on movies that, I mean, we already know about the union problems and the crew member problems and the walkouts with this thing.
Even suppliers too. So I mean, where does that go to?
Supplier issue. It could be a supplier issue too. Now, this story is going to leg it deep into next year too, as far as it's not, because we still don't have a full-on investigation report. Not that I'm expecting one. Probably not one until the beginning of the year, till the beginning of the new year. But we still don't have that, and that's even going to wind up being controversial, I feel, too.
Yeah.
Anything else to add on that, or are we moving forward?
It's just sad, man. That's all I got to say. It's just real sad.
As the one big thing, every time something comes out, it's just like, this gets even, I won't say dumber, but it just gets more ludicrous as how unchecked everything was with this whole situation.